Let's get oral. Let's get oral.
Well,
Hello.
hello. And it has happened, peeps. Welcome to Let's Get Oral. It is I, Jonathan Dornell, and your favorite co-host, Camille Zenobia. While we do have a very fun episode in the chamber to release to y'all, we wanted to sync up and react after listening to Andrew Huberman Lab podcast, because they just dropped a 2-hour episode on oral health.
Let's get oral.
That's right.
I'm so grateful. I love that we're making headlines over here in oral health.
Yes. I remember the moment he announced it. I don't think I've ever been so excited for a podcast episode to be released in a while. Goes to show how exciting my life is, but
It's the little things.
But I think the wait was worth it. I thought, highest summary for me. I enjoyed the 2 hours. It was comprehensive for laymen or those who aren't oral health experts, in my opinion. And the topics that he talked about and the advice related to it, for the most part, I was in agreement with. How about you, Camille?
Absolutely. When I saw the pod drop, I was surprised that there was no interviewee and a little skeptical on the face of it. But after listening to it, I thought he had a very nice, reasonable way of systematically going through kind of the hot topic issues of today and oral health. There were, of course, some nuances that I would have loved to see covered, but I think he covered the basics really well, very in depth. He talked to a lot of people, gave at least one name drop, and that is Ask the Dentist, who's fantastic. Also came out with an oral care line this year called FIG, which is fun.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that he has a nanohydroxyapatite varnish that he's making available to the profession. So that's fun. But I thought holistically, he did a really nice lip service to oral health in general on how we're elevating the game in the oral health space to include the microbiome and how essential it is for our metabolic health. I would say just off the cuff, I was a little surprised that he didn't talk more about kind of athletes and oral health, because there are some interesting issues going on there that I would have loved to see him cover, but perhaps another time. I think he could go deep with that one.
I'm in complete agreement with you on that. We briefly touched it with our episode with Dr. Michael Gogauer and the connection between gut and oral health and athletes. And like you said, the discrepancy and almost paradox, considering how we tend to culturally view athletes being super healthy, but they actually tend to be a population with poor oral health, depending on where you're at.
And I don't believe that it's wholesale due to the nutrition supplements that they're taking. I don't believe that it's wholesale due to a lack of hygiene. I think that there are multiple issues coming up as far as the training circuit programs that they're doing and their eating lifestyle. As I think there's a lot of nuance there that could be really interesting to deep dive into.
Yes, but
for the rest of us,
yes, right.
I'm not training that hard. I like to think I do, but not really.
I'm just trying to be, at this point, hopefully keep up with my dog on our walks.
I'm just trying to not embarrass myself at the beach. That's it. That's all I care. Because I love laying in the sun.
Yes.
Sorry, dermatologists. I do have SPF and good hats, but I do like the warmth.
Can't you tell it's winter here? But let's pivot it back to Andrew. I'm looking at the transcript. I definitely wanted to at least capture our reaction and highlight just some of the things that stood out to us. So if you don't mind me starting with one of the early topics that I got really excited to hear him, like you said, give lip service to and get more nitty gritty into the role of function, is about 20 minutes in when he starts talking about the function and importance of saliva and its role with helping to promote and maintain healthy teeth and mouth. I wish I had the medal ready to inaugurate Dr. Huberman into the Society of Spit Lovers like me, because I know this is a small society and it's a very special one. But it's he hit it like the nail on the head, and very early on in terms of the role it plays in remin and demin, and highlighting in the role the pH of our saliva, how salivary flow changes throughout the day, and it's linked to circadian rhythm, and how our oral care habits, whether it's eating, when and how we brush, how to try to optimize that schedule, and using those tools in our habits to promote hopefully the healthiest outcomes. And I also appreciate how he really bridged the function of the saliva, not only for nurturing and helping to, fight against cavities or prevent cavities, but also in its role for being able to lubricate and maintain the soft tissues, the soft and hard palate in our gums and gingiva. And again, I know we talk about this a lot, but I feel like the teeth are usually the star of the show when it comes to oral health, just due to being literally front of the face and in other people's faces when we chat and eat.
It's true. Yeah. The teeth, I feel, yes, they're important. Yes, we want to keep them, but they are housed by soft tissue that is equally important. And I don't think we have historically cared enough about that soft tissue aspect, or even have as many tools to deal with it. And saliva is such a huge part of the whole ecology in there. I would back up for a minute and say that regarding his oral health quiz, he gives these stepwise measures of kind of how involved you are in your oral health. But I loved that there's kind of this newer category of seeking to restore or support the oral microbiome, and saliva is one way to do that. So it's kind of a all holding hands together approach to oral wellness. And I love that he gave kind of an extra category to that oral health quiz
Mm-hmm.
to include those nuances that I think are just starting to gain notoriety.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
But yeah, keeping a wet, moist mouth is essential, but also having the ecology right so that you have the right pH to go with it.
Yes.
So it's like the oral cavity really does do self-repair the best. And he talks about that too, how anywhere else on your body, you cut yourself, you're going to have a little scar. In the mouth, that's not true, except for very severe issues. And so I wanted to kind of bring that forward as thank you for the mention. Thank you for understanding that there's this brilliance in the oral cavity that really does regeneration on its own, as long as the environment is
Supported.
good.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, exactly. So yes, saliva is the main player in keeping that whole system going.
Yes. Yet, not surprisingly, that's probably our least popular episode.
Nobody wants to talk about a gallon of spit.
No, but I do want to give a shout out to some of our listeners who have reached out and specifically said they really enjoyed it and wish people would pay more attention. And again, they are already part of the Society of Spit Lovers, as I mentioned earlier. So I'm hoping to add more to the camp over time.
We'll get there. We can't talk about the viscosity. Maybe we just talk about
function, right? The benefits.
Golden serum.
The golden. Fantastic. Oh, that's fantastic. Well, moving on from saliva, yeah. What else stood out to you from this 2-hour episode from Dr. Huberman?
Well, like you said, he goes into the science of remineralization and demineralization of the teeth, which I think historically has been the main focus of oral health and how we've cultivated our oral hygiene tools. And I appreciate the dedication to that science and the airtime, because people, I think, don't really necessarily understand the science behind it or what we're trying to achieve. So giving that backdrop it's great.
Mm.
I don't feel like there was enough airtime on the soft tissue health, really talking about how we can support it more, only because I think there's just not enough tools out there. There's just one active on the market that we use for that purpose, and it's not for everyone. And so that would be stannous fluoride is the only one indicated for gingivitis or inflamed tissues, since I hate using clinical terms for conveying what people should understand as inflammation of the mouth. And so I can understand on one hand why we don't know how to talk about it kind of just generally, because there's just not a lot of tools that we understand well. And so I would like to do a lot more discussion in that space and like dig into how we can support that better. But again, I think going back to knowing that all of our mucosal surfaces in the oral cavity really do want to regenerate, given a balanced system, as long as we're working towards balance, eating healthy, staying active, making sure we have great salivary production. All of those things will help get us to a nice balance.
Yes. When he started chatting about teeth-free men and D-men and acknowledging some of the balance, like you said, though, he didn't go into depth with the soft tissues. I do feel like, again, I don't know if it was a time thing or interesting, but I did appreciate that he provided a more holistic picture of the importance of remineralization, not just for the teeth, but the role of saliva and then how that it plays in concert with other aspects of our mouth. And I also thought that was a good segue, after all the stuff you talked about previously, into the tools section of the podcast, right?
Yes.
The do's and do nots, when he gets into a little bit about intermittent fasting and how that can play in concert with giving your teeth more opportunity to go through remin with your saliva, nighttime toothbrushing, and then actually talking about the importance of using like soft bristle toothbrush. Similarly on the mouthwash, the water picks. He probably spent, I'd say, the bulk of this episode really talking about the tools and what works, what doesn't work, what's tried and true, what's more, I don't want to say emergent, but which ones are, kind of case by case depending on who you are as a person. And I would say out of all of that, the mouthwash section, as you know, I have definitely talked about in the past on our NO the mouthwash episode, I was genuinely surprised that he basically was like, mouthwash, nah. To me, I interpreted what he said is he acknowledges that a lot of them probably aren't formulated for promoting balance. Like you said, when we talked about the oral microbiome and
Exactly.
inflammation and remin and whatnot. So yeah, I was pleased.
I was too. I am happy to throw out all mouthwashes as far as we understand them, and he specified antiseptic and alcohol based, obviously, for the reasons that we discuss in our mouthwash episode. Alcohol has additional impacts, of course, changes the skin functions and basically interrupts that balance. But I love that we're finally getting to a point where we've decided as oral health professionals that we are all done, playing this game of freshness when we know that there's a more holistic way to have balance. I love that. And good breath will follow a balanced mouth. So trust is there. It doesn't have to be a mint blast coming out of your face. It can be a natural smell. That smells good. I think that we've been trained to like smell up every part of ourselves, and maybe it's okay to smell human. I think it's pretty attractive when it smells right. Anyway.
Love it.
I'm not that granola, but I do appreciate the personalization process of how we all can be healthy and smell great together.
Yes. Hear ye.
Okay, so let's go back to balanced mouth saliva. He does talk about mouth breathing as being detrimental because you're creating too much air in the system and the salivary flow is then disrupted. And I do think that, there are opportunities there to help people. He didn't talk about mouth breathing tools like mouth taping, which makes me cringe, but I understand the utility of it. I would like to see more options for people who struggle with peach and salivary balance for those who have dry mouths. And I'm excited that I have hyaluronin based serum for the mouth that will hopefully help these people because it has been shown to help with hydration in dry mouths. But I'd like to see, a lot more tools that aren't mouthwash in nature, but are helping to create that balance for those who are a little out of balance. Some alternatives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that'd be fantastic. Did you have Shonix?
I got a coffee delivery.
It's better than Uber. It's hot.
And it's not mouthwash.
Sorry, for our listeners who can't see us right before we hit record, we are talking about the fears of running out of coffee first thing in the morning and sharing stories about desperate Starbucks deliveries in Manhattan in the winter and whatnot, and being like, I'm still in my pajamas or whatnot. And anyways,
yeah, that was so.
Your favorite co-host just had some coffee delivered, fresh.
Thanks, Hubs.
Fresh from the pot. Speaking of coffee, though, and link back to the saliva, I do want to give credit to him and his team for how they're able to describe D-min and Riemann, the cavity formation process, and the role Streptococcus mutans and other saccharolytic bugs play a role in that process, and not demonizing sugar inherently as a component of food. I thought he did a great job of tying those things together.
And that you're not going to run away from it by avoiding just sugar.
Exactly.
You'd have to wholesale drop everything. And even then, I'll drop all carbs, complex, everything. And then even then, you're not going to get there because strep mutans likely has alternate pathways to function. I do want to call out that there was a recent paper showing distinct strain differences between different strep mutans and suggesting that some strains are worse than others. I was a little uncomfortable with the wholesale pathogen blaming for strep mutans just because it is so ubiquitous. I have a hard time settling that with just a full-on pathogen as though it were an STD. I don't love that. I don't necessarily buy into that. I think that there are ecological niches that
it's nuanced.
It's a little bit more complex than that. And I don't love the ethical debate around not kissing your children if you are a grown-up, because I think that kids need affection more than everything else. So that all makes me very uncomfortable, and I think that we should hug and kiss our kids all the time and make sure that they know that they're loved, so that they're not amiss in the world as adults. But that's a whole other side of nurturing that I'll let the other professionals handle.
Right.
But kiss your kids. I don't. Yeah.
Kiss your kids, kiss your pets. All right. Don't kiss your pets. I mean, do what you want to do, but
snuggle your pets appropriately.
Anyway. Love your pets.
Oh, speaking of pets, okay, there was a lot of talk about xylitol. I understand the utility. I understand that xylitol as kind of a sweetener replacer also seems to inhibit some bacterial members. That's great.
Yep.
If you do have pets, I don't necessarily want xylitol being the main thing in my house, just because I don't trust my dog to stay out of everything. She has historically been very good, but I'm not willing to take that risk. So that's a caveat for me. Other people have lots of strong feelings around xylitol. I also
Yeah,
think that, yeah,
we
again,
talked
just
about it.
when we just come down to one ingredient as like the thing to sit on, I get uncomfortable because we are a society of variations, and the whole purpose of, you know, the reason we're all different is so that we increase our chances of survival and health. And so a one and done ingredient list doesn't make sense for me for everyone. And so I always get real uncomfortable when we say, just find anything with xylitol and you should be fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I believe we chatted about the xylitol a bit on, was it our taste episode?
I think
Briefly.
so. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, sweets.
Yeah.
Sweets.
So there's a lot of crosstalk from what we've already discussed in our previous episodes and what was addressed in the latest Huberman podcast. Is there anything that he did not chat or bring up for discussion during these 2 hours that you felt like was a missed opportunity?
Well, he goes into the science of fluoride, which I really, really appreciate. I, again, am not throwing fluoride into the sea to get rid of it completely. I think that it has utility in oral health. I do think that people who are concerned, or that people who have fluorosis, I think they should have other options. I was surprised that he didn't go into the science of remineralization with hydroxyapatite as an external substance. So he talked about kind of the natural composition of the teeth,
Mm-hmm.
and how hydroxyapatite is part of that. He doesn't talk about the remineralization opportunity of these other hygiene products in the market. And I think there is enough evidence to support the utility of having that ingredient in your oral care. And I kind of would have liked a little bit more talk time in there. It wouldn't have taken much. And again, I love that Steve Brenne, the Ask the Dentist, is doing a hydroxyapatite varnish for the profession to give other options. Anything that we can add here is helpful. But again, fluoride is very useful. It has been provocative for certain populations. I don't think it's a one size fits all, but I also don't think that we need to throw it in the trash like we do mouthwashes. Other things that I wish he would have hit on, he talked about nitric oxide, he talked about the microbiome, but he didn't really kind of weave the story together. And I'm glad that we have the nitric oxide episode to fall back on, because I think we did go into the science in a lot more detail that could be helpful for some to understand what's happening there. And the reason I bring that up is because when we're talking about the microbiome and heart health, we know that the oral cavity has oral, we call them periopathogens, potential pathogens, but basically when the system is off balance, these bugs can get into our vasculature and create problems and increase our heart risk. But now we're also talking about the function of the oral microbiome in creating nitric oxide precursors that are essential for vasodilation and heart health, like your blood pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And so these are two very different functions, but they impact our metabolic health equally. And so talking about that metabolic profile of health is where I was surprised he didn't go. And I guess I'm going to think of this episode for Huberman as kind of an entry point where he can jump off and go spelunking with the rest of us in this really cool oral microbiome meets metabolic health space.
Yes. Yeah. I think him not going as deep into the biology, as you mentioned, is a nice foundation for future discussions on the molecular mechanisms behind nitric oxide and how that plays from diet to the mouth, mouth to oral microbiome to vasodilation, all the way to the cycle promoting cardiovascular health. And I think similarly to he did briefly like acknowledge, say, like the links between perio and Alzheimer's or dementia, right? But like similarly, how oral health or oral pathologies may be linked to other parts of systemic health that sometimes, not sometimes, a lot of times is underappreciated.
Yes. Yeah.
I will also say I think he did well. I think big picture, I think it was again very comprehensive episode. I don't think he really missed much from that perspective. For someone who's a nerd in this space, yes, I wish he did spend more time on the oral microbiome. But if you only got 2 hours, I feel like he probably prioritized a lot of his topics appropriately.
Yes, I agree. I think he hit all the major issues that I like to see
Mm-hmm.
addressed, and I'm going to be impressed forever that he wholesale discarded mouthwashes. That's a commitment, and
That's a tough
I'm
one.
all behind it. So thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the other thing that really stood out to me, not that this is something I'm highlighting that was missed that I wish I heard more, but I think for him, but more so for all of us, is he mentions at some point in this episode how doing the preparations and research for this episode may have the greatest impact on his like day-to-day habits. And like just to think about, for him to say something like that, I don't know how many episodes he has in his catalog, but I've listened to a decent amount of them, and I tend to learn something new from just about any of them, whether I'm familiar with the topics or not, and try to take those things home as needed or warranted. So I can only imagine what that is like for him. And yet the oral health episode is the one that seems to have, I don't want to say the greatest impact, but the greatest, like, oh, wow, here's some missed opportunities or ways that I can improve my potential overall quality of life, um, in a space that we kind of, depending on the quiz, we've already fallen one of those three buckets,
Yes.
right?
And so not only was it impactful for him thinking about his daily wellness routines, but the other talk point that he had when he was talking with the professionals was, yeah, there were some subtle differences, but holistically, they were all in alignment, which was really great to hear from me because I'm not always sure what the kind of global profession has to say on fluoride. I know that there are a lot of people, he talks about this very divisive campaign against and for fluoride. And again, I sit somewhere in the middle where I am very pragmatic about my approach. And yet I see a utility. I don't want to throw everything out, but I do understand that there is a dose that is appropriate for some populations and not others, and that we can't have a one size fits all because that's not appropriate. And so I don't necessarily want to be in this divisive category, and I get real uncomfortable with the professionals that really are like dying by fluoride, basically. Like, I'm going to hold on to this fluoride and shove it in everybody's mouth because this is the way that it's always been done. I don't agree with that. I think that we need other tools, but I also really do believe that for some people, we do need to get creative still, and we shouldn't just throw away our only tools.
Agreed. I definitely agree with that. Is there anything else you wanted to highlight, address, react to from the latest Huberman Lab episode?
Oh, I wanted to give him some of our mouth serum for his canker sore issues.
Yeah.
So maybe I should just send him some.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Let's behind the scenes see how we can help make that happen. That's fantastic, Camille. Well, in summary, I thought it was an overall great episode. I'm super stoked that this is out there in the wild. There's people actually talking about oral health or thinking about it at least this week or today. I think it's prompt timing as we roll into Valentine's tomorrow. So there'll probably be a lot of sweets and smooches being passed. And I think it's important to leverage that hallmark as a way for also highlighting oral health. And also, like, I'm excited to see what else he talks about on this topic in more detail when it comes to the oral microbiome. It's linked to cardiovascular health, the roles sleep and oral health play to each other, and all these other interesting intersections that we've either have started to explore with our podcast and what we have planned for the future.
Yes. Yes. I think there's so many opportunities here. I'm excited. I'll send him a Valentine with some serum.
Nice. Perfect. Well, on that note, thank you all again for listening. I'm Jonathan Dornell.
I'm Camille Zenobia.
This is your favorite co-host of Let's Get Oral. If you haven't already, please subscribe to this podcast on your favorite streaming platforms, whether it's Podcast Addict, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you can find it. And definitely share, like, review, all this stuff to help us promote and get our content that is hopefully educational and fun, promote and improve your quality of life. So stay tuned. We are in the works of actually releasing another really fun interview in the near future that's going to be exploring more of the links between oral health and systemic health. And so we're excited to announce that and release it in the near future. But until then, I'm Jonathan. Thank you for listening to Let's Get Oral.
Let's get oral.
Keep smiling, everyone.